Hi. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, FirstMark. Thanks, Parsons. Thanks, all of our speakers. How many of you have heard of Poppin? And I can't see any of you, actually. Yeah, some. We are not as household a name as Pepsi, but I thought I'd take a minute of my 15 to show you a little bit about and explain a little bit about what Poppin is and what we do. We are a one-stop shop for work style, so we make so many different kinds of products across different categories, from pens to stationery to desk accessories and even furniture. We are Design Driven in New York City. We are a team of 160 people, just like Pepsi. No, three. Three industrial designers make all of our hundreds of products, and just up the street here at our company, which is at 25th and Broadway. We are colorful. We were invented to be a colorful company so that we could match to many of the brands that we sell to, and also just reinvigorate and understand what this stale idea of office products is and turn it into something colorful and happy. We are affordable, from a pen that's $1 to a stapler that's $14 to a file cabinet that's $229. We always mean to be a great value to the consumers that we sell to. And we are in stock and ready to ship, even for contract quality furniture, which is a very big proposition. Anything that we have is in our warehouse and we can get it to you within a day or two, as opposed to waiting 12 weeks and having a dealer have to deal directly with you and choose the different components. And we work happy ourselves. That's our slogan, and all of our products that we design help people work happy. That's our goal, that's our mission, and that's what we're designing for. So if I can just share with you a little bit. By the way, am I close enough to that? It was fine. Great. I'll just show you some of the products across some of the categories that we design. Desk organization and accessories, a modular assortment of slick and glossy ABS plastic with silicone accompaniments. Office tools, notepads, notebooks, writing, storage, filing, task seating, collaborative seating, lounge seating, desk systems. Interestingly, all of our furniture goes together with no tools, so our desk system has what we call the clever lever system, and everything can go together with just levers that fasten a few parts. Conference tables, and lighting. So that's a little primer on what we do. Hopefully those who did not know about us get a better sense about what our products are all about, and then I can enter into the real meat of our discussion, which is 10 things you didn't know about designing office products. And assuredly, some of you may know some of these things, but certainly all of you don't know all of these things. So one of you will leave here invigorated. Mm-hmm. Most wheels don't need reinvention. So much of what we do, from pens to staplers to notebooks and even furniture, has been around for 100 years or more. And there's no sense in really reinventing it. We are not Swingline, we are not 3M, we are not trying to add a new bell and whistle to a stapler every year. So much of what we do is about the broad family of the products that we design. And there's so much commodity to what all of those products are. And if I imagine 100 years of staplers, the amalgam of that image is what you see here right there. There are so many manufacturers who have perfected the mechanization of how a stapler should work. We don't mean to think about that too much. We just need to put some clever details there and eschew all the extraneous detail, distill it to its primary paradigm form, and if I close my eyes and imagine that amalgam, our stapler is what I see. We are always trying to make that distilled elemental idea so that the product rings true to itself. If I didn't tell you, that little anvil there, the place where the staple becomes clinched, you may all be familiar with the double-sided anvil, one that goes in, one that goes out, and you push your thumb up and you spin it around and you turn it down. And that one that goes out is to make a more temporary clinch. And we decided no one knows what that is, no one uses it. I didn't even know what it was before I joined the company. Let's just get rid of it. Let's make it just that simple one. Let's put it symmetrically. Let's put it down the center. When you put a piece of paper in and you staple your staple, you will intuitively see that that paper is going to go right in that center place. So that's what we like to do. 60% of the product that we develop, we want to be that much clever with the details, but not reinvent the wheel. 20% of the things we do might be very innovative and invented from scratch, and they might deserve some more PR appeal or garner better share in the market. And 20% is stuff that we may go to a factory and take something off the shelf and put it in our color and tweak it just a little bit. But we don't need to reinvent too much. So much of what's out there, people would like to just have that streamlined approach, and 99% is really satisfying a desire in just doing that. My second point, making things complex is simple. This is a 1949 Cadillac sedanette, and I would argue that it is easier to heap on a lot of extraneous form and decorative detail and make that thing as complex as it is. It's objectively beautiful and represents something special about our country and what we did at that time. But making things simple is complex, and this is also a 1949, but Porsche 356. And in working to take away as much detail as possible and keep it streamlined and effective, I would argue that many, many decades later, this design is still informing the generations that followed after it, whereas this smacks more of a decades gone by lumbering artifact. Still informing the way that that company moves forward, but something different about what happened here. And I don't mean to say anything about post-war German austerity versus American opulence, but there's just something there that is commensurate with what Poppin is trying to do because it's very effective for us. And if you would just imagine the exercise, if I asked you to sort of sum up today, what happened to you today in 100 words or less, you might think, oh, well, I did that, and then I did that thing, and then, oh, then there was that, and then that, and you would come up with about 100 words, and it would be pretty easy, and you could read back that. But if I asked you to do that in 10 words, that would be a much more challenging exercise. And I would argue, too, that years later, if you looked at that 10-word exercise, if you had done it effectively, it might ring true of more prose, it might relate back to other exercises that were done with those same 10 words, and it might have been more difficult to do but more rewarding to have the outcome. And so for many reasons, that's what we are trying to do at Poppin, to design the products that we do. Because it relates to this. The whole family makes the rules. So you would not think that a paper clip could match a notebook, could match an office chair, but at Poppin it really does, and we consider everything that we do to be related to each other, and the more that we develop more products, the more we have all of the legacy of those products to look back on to inform the rest. Being systematic is endemic. Does anyone know how much the difference between the dots of a Lego block are? I can't see any hands. So I'll tell you, it's 8 millimeters. And I think that when they did that many decades ago, no one thought long and hard about how they were going to build the system that is now Lego today. And as I have a 7-year-old son, there are thousands and thousands of different pieces that are incorporative of the Lego system. So I think they were in a very serendipitous spot to have the opportunity to just invent that system from scratch. And this, incidentally, is the Legos that I played with as a 6 or 7-year-old myself only understanding much later that these were developed in 1961, and so I must have been given hand-me-down Legos, which is unfortunate for me. But I remember all of those, the angled surface of the wheels and the way that the wheel axle plugged into the block there, and I could not figure out just why it stayed in and didn't come out so easily. So we have, because we have so many different kinds of products across different categories, we have a similar kind of problem that the Lego designer of today has to think about in terms of the systems. We develop a lot of furniture that wants to be systematic. We have these modular desk systems that also want to be systematic and fitting into each other. And as we develop new systems, it is a slippery slope to slide down to think that maybe this should be a system. Maybe as I develop this one product, I should think about how the contours and measurements of it match up with everything that might follow it. But that is something we have to do very diplomatically and carefully. Sometimes we develop products, we may present them to the market, and they may not stick to the wall. And so if we spend too much time developing the systematic approach, we may have wasted a lot of the program's development and end up in a position where we could have developed something that's more singular and available and quicker. And if we don't consider the ramifications of systematic nature, then we may find ourselves in a position where we are wanting to further evolve that product line, and we have not thought carefully about it. Every time we develop a new piece for our modular ABS desktop system, we bring pieces close together and see, if that could be a ½ millimeter different, would it line up eventually? Would it be a situation where we have more opportunity? So we want to be very wary of the spectrum that we fit on. We don't want to work too hard to make things systematic. We don't want to work too lightly to not make them. This last one is less of a rhetorical, not last, it's fifth, less of a rhetorical argument than just a statement. You may not make some things in China when you're making office products, and you may not know that. Because of something called anti-dumping laws, you cannot make a paper clip that is a shiny metal, and so we make them in vinyl-covered colors. You may not make an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with ruled lines, and you may not make a wood pencil. You can, but you would just pay egregious taxes on that, and that is because certain companies in this country have lobbied against China dumping cheap product into this country and competing with the products that they make. Notably, Mead, my sister's husband's grandfather, was the CEO of Mead, so I have him to think about that. Quality is iterative. This is something that is a story from my wife, who was and has been in the handbag business. If you go to Scandicci outside of Milan, you can hand over a sketch of a handbag to a qualified craftsman, and in several weeks you will have back to you a perfect representation of your sketch, something that incorporates all of the craft and design knowledge that that person has imbued into the process because they are a consumer of design and culture within their country themselves. And they bring so much iterative knowledge to that process that you don't need to do as much instruction as work with that craftsman to develop the final thing. If you go to China, and I'm not hitting on China, we just make a lot of things in China, so it's my experience. You can make the same bag at the same quality, but you won't get it done the first time. You can send them a spec, you could send them a 3D file, you can send them as much instruction as you want, but the first one will have inconsistencies because there is not that iterative, institutional, cultural knowledge about what the craft and the product is all about. But they are so good at emulating and so good at being part of an industrial process and so good at taking instruction and moving forward, that in that same 7-week time frame, you could make a sample in a week, get it back, make iterations and adjustments to that, make another sample, get it in a week, and if you have the patience to sit through and develop all of those different iterations through time, you can make the same quality item. So it's not that those two cultures are disconnected about the ability of quality. It's just that the instruction and the cultural institution about the products that we are making for Western societies that we want to our standards need to be instructionally iterated step by step with those developers. Eyes are the prize. We do so much color matching of all our different products across so many different product lines and categories. So even if you want to make a stapler in one factory in the coral color that we do, and subsequently make another batch in the same factory 6 months later, it is challenging to make those colors match so that you have the product in the store sitting next to itself, and they might not match together unless you're very diligent about color checking. So let alone different factories using the same materials, let alone different factories making different products with different materials across different parts of the country. So using technology like photospectrometers and light boxes, using the same light bulbs in the same light boxes in different parts of the world, us in New York, our team over in China, we have a team of 16 people in China actually going around to different factories and making the products that we do. It is still enormously challenging, and it still comes down to eyes and seeing things objectively and subjectively through your eyes. This is the Farnsworth-Munsell test, and if you were to score a perfect score, you would have all of these colors perfectly in line with each other in the row that is. It's something you can take online and check it out yourself. The relative, unless your monitor is very, very, very far off, you can relatively take this test and it will be accurate. So we noticed that in particular these two factories were turning back products that didn't match up to the finite results that we needed for matching. If you use a photospectrometer, our factories will make things to within a delta 2 of tolerance, but your eye can see things much more finely than that. And so our staplers in particular and some of our new silicone products were always coming back not matching as well as the rest of our products. And then we realized some months into it, Andrew is the guy who works with those factories. We should send Andrew this test. And we sent him the Farnsworth-Munsell test, and he did horribly on this test. And so Andrew doesn't do color checking anymore. Furniture is difficult to deploy. Oops, I went up instead of down. Yeah, if you make contract furniture, you have so many different ways of dealing with the customer through a dealer, through different pricing structures, through so many different kinds of components that can lead to a final assembly of what a desk is. And it's very confusing to the consumer. It's very consuming to our target market, who are largely startups, 100 to 200 person folks who may not have even heard of a Herman Miller or a Steelcase, just know CB2 and IKEA. So we are designing our products to meet the IKEA consumer's ease of purchase with Herman Miller, Steelcase, Hayworth approach to quality, BIFMA standards, and testing. And as I said, all of our products, when deployed in the field, you open up the box, you can put together a desk with just levers. You can put a desk together for 4 people in about 2 minutes. So really taking away the construction aspect of the IKEA and the dealer, high-end, expensive, confusing, price structuring puzzle that is contract furniture to anyone who has never dealt with it before. Number 9, everyone wants to stand up, but they really don't. You may have heard in the news so much about standing up at work is beneficial for your health. That is absolutely true. Studies, though, have shown that as people stand up at work, they feel like there is equilibrium they need to balance, and when they go home, they lounge more. If any of you has ever been on a diet, you know that if you are very good to yourself during the day, you might splurge a little bit in the evening. And that's what happens. And what's more, people who buy $1,500 and $2,000 electric adjustable desks love them for a few days and then don't actually utilize them as much as they can. And we are in no position, as I said with the staplers, to really spend a lot of dollars, resources, and time, because we're developing so many products, to invent new ways of making stand-up desks. Our idea about how to approach that is to make accessories that help people solve those problems. So right now, for example, we are working on a laptop riser that would be quite slim and demure on your desk, but when you're ready to stand up, goes up very easily with a spring and represents about a 10th or a 20th of the cost of a stand-up desk. And my last point is, glue is always a sticky situation. So we have had a number of glue gates in our office, one being labels that were supposed to be stuck to plastic product that sold on the shelf and didn't peel off like it was supposed to, and sticky notes that did not stick on walls when they were supposed to. Mauro, if you're here, what 3M does is amazing, and it's tough to replicate that overseas. And that's just indicative of every project has a situation like that. There is the little bitty problem that you didn't think was going to be the hiccup or hamstring of the product. As a designer, you're always thinking of the novelty and the innovation in the product, and all of the other parameters that kind of help support it are just the things that you can get easily. So, for example, we are working on we have a very successful ping pong conference table, and to complement it, we're working on a cornhole coffee table. So a coffee table that you can adjust and play cornhole with that looks seamless like one or the other in each configuration. And we joke to ourselves, oh, it'd probably be the beanbags. That'll be tough to make this project turn out. Turns out it is. You can't import corn bean bags from China because they have corn in it, and that's actually something we did think in advance would be a problem. But then to match the density of the size of the kernel of the corn so that you have a 6x6 bean bag with the same amount of weight for the volume that it fills, using plastic pellets is extremely challenging. So luckily, having started that project at the beginning of the rest of the cornhole table project, it turns out that we might be finished with the beanbags in time with the end of the table. And that's what I've got. Thanks.
Jeff, thank you very much. So we're at time for one question. I'm dying to ask you one, though. How do you pick the colors? What's the process for that?
Well, we have about 20 colors now. We had a core combination palette of about 16 that we burgeoned into the 20, and we do some things that are seasonal. I work hand in hand with our merchants who kind of call the shots in terms of what we want to develop and look on the market in terms of what they want to compete or work with. And together we kind of decide what's a color area that we want to work forward with. It sometimes involves a palette of a couple of colors for a new program that we're working on. And we've also had to adjust colors. Our yellow, I feel, is a little less sunny than it should be, and it is not selling as well as it might, so we might adjust our yellow going forward. Our orange that we were molding in plastic was a little bit dingier and duller than our actual true orange Pantone 166 that represents our brand, Poppin. And so everything we printed was the 166, but everything we molded was not, and so we had a wholesale change with our factories to develop that color matching to move our orange more toward the color that it should have been. But making so many products in so many colors that need to match each other is something that can only be done in so many SKUs for so many different products. So we're very spare about how we want to move forward in color. We will evolve it slowly and surely.
Great. You can just shout it out.
Well, we do a lot of testing for furniture because there are all kinds of BIFMA tests that need to be passed in order to do that. Fortunately, the biggest test is the market when we go to market and make sure that stuff is selling and performing well. There are so many tests associated with each of the product typologies that we do, and fortunately, our office is the perfect representative group of our target market. So we do a lot of our testing in terms of, we don't do focus group testing so much as peer user group testing. And because so much of the product, as I said in the first slide, are stuff that is tried and true on the market, and we are just trying to take away extraneous detail from it. So far, so good. It's working out very well.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.